Good afternoon, friends. Thank you very much, Alka, for introducing me with a lot of kind words. But let me also introduce myself. I have been exposed to six different environments in my life, and those are student life. Majority of that time, I faced utter poverty, but continued my struggle. Indian Air Force, where I was supposed to guard my country by detecting enemy movements through early warning signals. So I learned to detect my enemy in life at very early age. Enemy in entrepreneur's life are your competitors and your adversities. As a lawyer, I didn't change much. From physical guarding, I converted myself to intellectual guarding and protecting people's wealth. In the words of Ram Jethmalani, lawyers are protector of others' wealth. And then I became a corporate executive, the move I call changing from wealth protector to a wealth creator, again for others. And finally, I became an entrepreneur to fulfill my desire of leaving a footprint in the society, self-sustained organization, a little bit of hidden desire to support some life in decent life. Currently, I'm an entrepreneur involved in multiple businesses, including automobile, real estate, mining and crushing, software and digital platform, and where responsibility as an entrepreneur is much bigger and wider than just making money. Now of late, I've started a bit of training and teaching. As they say, leaders are supposed to produce leaders better than them. Many a time I'm asked, which of this career was the toughest? Well, I haven't been able to find an answer to that, but I can definitely tell you that the easiest one was with the Indian Air Force, because we knew where our enemy is. In corporate world, we don't know. Before we start, I wish to make few disclaimers. Normally, these are at end of any writing or subject, but I am making these disclaimers in the beginning for a reason. I studied in a government-aided Hindi medium school till 10th standard, and I learned my English alphabets in 6th standard. So I'm not very good at pronunciations and spellings. You won't be able to see my weakness in spellings, but pronunciation, you have to face me for next hour or so. If any of you think that I'm going to speak is my creation, that's not true either. I have read, watched, listened, and then compiled what I'm going to speak. So I'm going to speak a lot of things which are already spoken or written by others. If you think I'm a natural speaker, that's also not true. For today, I prepared myself as much as I could, and I always do that before I take up any assignment, be it personal or professional. For example, what did I do for today? I wrote what I wanted to speak, read and rehearsed that many times. I asked the organizer about average intellect of today's attendees to make my pitch right. I understood my playground well before starting the game. I inquired about the arrangement in the studio, came here personally 2 days in advance to make minor changes to the arrangement so that I do not mess up today. I'm telling you all this because I do not want to take the credit for what I'm not. Practically, if you have observed and listened to what I've said, what I want to convey today is already done. Now for next hour or so, I'm just going to explain that. I've been watching the scene in India very carefully for quite some time. And especially these days after the pandemic, COVID-19 hit the world, including India. And we have observed a reasonably long lockdown. Whether it was needed or not is a different matter altogether. Whenever you switch on any news channel or pick up a newspaper, you find that everyone is talking about shortages. On an average, in any news or in any newspaper, 60% of the time or the space is only talking about shortages. Shortage of manpower, shortage of resources, shortage of foreign exchange, shortage of hospital, shortage of electricity, so on and so forth. But there's one shortage which is responsible for all these shortages is generally glossed over, which is shortage of the leadership. Very recently, in June 2020, while downgrading India's sovereign debt rating, the international rating agency Moody made a most unflattering statement by which I was badly hurt. They said governance and leadership are material to India's credit profile, and lack of it is material factor in today's downgrade. It's not a very happy statement for any Indian to listen. Otherwise, also we know that in India, we have too much of government and too little governance. Leader is a very important in every field of life. Those of you have read about Napoleon, his famous words were, if you build an army of 100 lions and their leader is a dog, in any fight, the lion will die like a dog. And if you build an army of 100 dogs and their leader is a lion, all the dogs will also fight like a lion. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't misunderstand me. And if there is anybody from the press, please don't misquote me, which you are capable of doing, and which you keep doing very often. When I talk about lack of leadership, I do not talk about only lack of leadership in politics or government. There's a lack of leadership in every walk of life, be it political, administrative, education institutions, sports, organizations, industry, labor, law and order contingents. What is this? What is the leadership we are talking about? Many people have written different definitions of leadership, but I have developed my own definition, which is leadership is an art or ability. Please listen to each word carefully because I'm going to talk about each of these words thereafter. Leadership is an art or an ability of a competent person of setting a clear and achievable goal by considering its all possible consequences. Then motivating a team from different backgrounds, be those ethnic, lingual or geographical, because your employees or your peers can never be from one particular region or speaking one particular language or belong to one religion. So people from different backgrounds to achieve that set goal. How? By creating a commonly understood communication and creating an environment which is little more conducive and bearable. So what we have to do, develop a communication which is commonly understood across the board and make the environment little more conducive and bearable. And then showing them the path to achieve that goal from leading from the front. So leaders do not have to just talk. They have to deliver, they have to lead from the front. I cannot say with certainty whether leaders are born or leaders are made. But there's one school of thought which believes that leaders are born. India has a population of 1.38 billion. And we procreate one Australia every year. And yet, there's a shortage of leaders in our country. So those of you who think leaders are born and you contribute to that theory, may I suggest that you throw away that theory, bare and truth. So if leaders are not born, can the leader be made? I hold a view, give me a man with reasonable common sense and decency, and I can make him a leader. Before I go on to speak on the leadership, I understand most of the attendees today are entrepreneurs. If you are sitting across me, I would have asked you what do you understand by entrepreneur, but because I do not have that privilege, so according to me, the entrepreneur is a person who wants to leave a footprint in the society. He wants to transform lives. He wants to create a meaning and he is so focused on the meaning that nothing scares him. The only thing that drives him is his goal, and that goal lays the road he makes. The entrepreneur is someone who invented the phrase, I can. What are the attributes of a good leadership? There are many attributes. We will talk about some of the cardinal ones today. First and foremost attribute of any leader is a professional knowledge and professional competence. You will agree with me that you cannot be born with professional knowledge or professional competence even if you are son of a prime minister or son of a scientist or pedigree of a lawyer or an astronaut. Professional knowledge has to be acquired the hard way. It's a constant study. We have to learn professional knowledge and competence throughout. Therefore, it takes time. It's an output of continuous learning. But we in India, as soon as we reach the position of power, whether it's ministerial, administrative, or executives, we think that we are depository of all the knowledge. I wonder the civilian gentlemen who are charged with the responsibility of defending the country have ever read a book on warfare, or a minister who is in charge of education and human resources development even knows what it means. Let me give you an example. Around 2 years back, I was in a Jindal Nature Cure, Bangalore, and there was one MP from Punjab who was also there for a week. One afternoon, he was sitting in the garden and he was reading a newspaper. And he says, Seema Saab, ye pill kya hota hai? I asked him, what are you talking about? And then he looked at the paper, it was PIL, Public Interest Litigation. So I asked him, why don't you ask such questions to your political leaders or chief minister? He said, kaise पूछूं? Unko pata chal jayega ki main बेवकूफ हूं. Without professional knowledge, you can never have professional competence. And if you haven't got the professional competence, you can never be a leader. It's a well-known fact that 2% of the people in the world in any profession make 90% of the money in that profession, and rest 90% are contented to share the remaining 2%. Or 0.001% of people in any field go on to head their organizations. Rest have to be contented by being governed. Let me share 2 examples with you. Every year we produce 4 lakh law graduates. How many of them go on to become A-class lawyers, the likes of Hari Salve or Kapil Sibal? And why don't they reach there? The only reason is they do not give their head and soul to acquire professional knowledge and competence to the level it's required. In the armed forces, we produce 4,000 plus officers, commissioned officers every year. So in approximately 3 years, we produce around 12,000 officers. And still, 3 of them go to head those organizations as Chief of Army, Chief of Air Force, and Chief of Navy. They are trained in the same training center. They are exposed to a similar environment. They have learned the same thing. But how come those 3 are different from others? It's merely because they have put in their head and soul to learn what they are expected to do. Professional knowledge and professional competence is an imperative requirement of the leadership. That takes me to the next attribute, the ability to make up your mind and take a decision and then stand by that, accepting full responsibility. Those of us who have suffered at the hands of superiors who cannot take a decision know what it is like. An act of omission is much worse than an act of commission. An act of commission can be put right, even if the decision is wrong, by colleagues, by superiors, by subordinates. But an act of commission cannot be put right. Why does a person not take a decision? Because he lacks confidence. And why does he lack a confidence? Because he lacks professional knowledge and competence. Let me give you an example of my own. I was in Oman from 2000 to 2012, and I was a group executive director, legal and project for that group. We had around 70 companies, and we also had some of the other projects going on at the headquarter level. So all the CEOs and project managers used to report to me on those projects. As a routine, I would visit each of the project at least once every quarter. And during these visits, I will first go to the site, find out what is not going right, and then ask them what is the reason. And normal answer was, sir, we are waiting for that decision. And then I would ask the project manager, what are you doing about the issue at hand? More often than not, the answer used to be, sir, I have been considering, I have been thinking about it. And then I would use most many choice of words and shout, if you must be a bloody fool, be one quickly. Even today, when I meet my HODs, the only question I ask them, is there any decision pending? You would agree with me that a lot of money, time, and resources are wasted by not taking a decision. Files keep lying on the inefficient people's table, and when they take decision, the cost of project goes very high. Who suffers? We, the citizen of a country, or the subject of organizations. Leader must take a decision after considering all its consequences. We have already seen that one of the attributes of leader is that he must take a decision quickly and then stand by that. Now, the more important is that the decision must be taken by weighing all its pros and cons. Quite often, the decisions are taken for immediate gains in a haste, be it political, administrative, or economic, without seeing their overall impact. Let me give you an example. Some of you might remember that in 2010, a girl working in night shift of a BPO in Gurgaon was gang raped and murdered while going back home. It happened little before Nirbhaya case. The whole administrative machinery and the police swung into an action. An order was issued that all the girls working in night shift must be dropped back by company transport, escorted by a armed security guard other than the driver. Everybody thought it was a great decision. But what was the real impact of that? Owners of those businesses, BPOs and call centers, stopped employing girls or reduced their employment because cost of employing them went up significantly. Lots of girls lost their job. Now, some of these girls had come to Delhi to work in these call centers from faraway places like Punjab, West Bengal, Meghalaya, Assam. And when you come from a small place to a big place like Chandigarh or Delhi or Bombay, the delta in your income is very high, it could be 5 times. So by passing out this regulation that girls must be dropped back by a company transport and escorted by an armed guard, hundreds of girls lost their job. And by that, their earning dropped. You know, they were supporting their families who were living in a poor condition in those small areas. They could have created a scope for the sibling to come to Delhi for higher education or making more money. But with one decision, everything was smashed. In other words, just to save some girls, all girls from being raped, thousands of girls were raped in one go. Did the rape case in NCR reduce? The answer is no. Only scene of the crime shifted from roadside to other places. Let's take another example, which is a bit sensitive topic. We are very sensitive to the word terrorism. What is terrorism? A well-designed act of a hostile group or a country to a very small group of people, could be theirs or yours, to destabilize a well-structured large organization and make them devote attention and significant human and material resources to tackle that act. Very often we hear zero tolerance to terrorism. We deploy a significant number of armed forces personnel in protection against terrorist activities. Ladies and gentlemen, most of you must have heard about 26/11 Mumbai attack. How many of you think that you were affected by that? Well, I can't see your hands here, but I presume not more than 2 or 3 hands will raise. I can tell you every one of us is affected by that. After 26/11 attack in Mumbai, security in all 3 stars, 4-star, and 5-star hotels world over increased significantly. Extra security guards are employed, X-ray machines are installed, sniffer dogs are put into service, scanners are put into service. What has it done? It has increased the cost of operation significantly, which is ultimately shifted to customers. Today, when you buy a coffee or sandwich in 5-star hotel, the extra 15 or 20% what you pay goes towards this security. But have we succeeded in controlling the terrorism? No. The only shifted the place of operation from hotel to restaurant, as in a Paris attack, or from a hotel to a religious place, as they did in Australia. The question that comes to mind, was it required to spend so much money in guarding these hotels? And how many lives we have saved? You know, on average, 77 lakhs people every year die because of malnourishment. Around another 40,000 people dies because of road accident. Had that money been put to use for improving transportation system or malnourishment or medical facilities, you could have saved many more lives. Let me give you another story which demonstrates both the above traits in a very, very simple way. A lot of you might have gone a cruise in your life or might have seen an old tanker operating in the sea. Normally, these old tankers are very huge in size and turning their course is not so fast, not easy. So there was one old tanker which was traveling through an unknown water, and suddenly the person at the deck saw a glacier in front. So he came running down and he informed to the deck officer, "Sir, there's a glacier at 10 kilometers, we need to change the course." So he used his mind for a couple of minutes, and by then the distance was reducing. And then he went on to call the captain. "Sir, we are heading to a glacier, what should we do?" By the time captain came up and he spoke to his superiors which side he should turn, the vessel was very close to the glacier and they had to take a very quick turn, right turn. In the bargain, they could save the front, but rear end of the tanker hit the glacier and there was a hole. So what happened? The water started going into that vessel. You know, those of you know a bit about shipping, when the vessel, water goes into the vessel starts turning a bit. And normally what we do is, we also put a water on the other side of the vessel to balance it. But we don't realize by doing that, we are increasing the load of a tanker or a ship, and which creates extra drag. And then you suddenly realize that efficiency is reduced, speed of the vessel is reduced. And then suddenly there's a call from the owner of a vessel or a chief operating officers, no, you have to increase the speed, please pump in more fuel. So what do? You induce more financial resources to catch up to the speed. And what have you done in the meantime? You have lost time. And in this meantime, the vessel which was actually parallel or behind you went ahead of you, and ultimately when it reached the port where both of them were supposed to reach, that vessel decked in first before this vessel, and this vessel had to wait outside for 2 or 3 days. Though the leader knew what is the right decision, he did not have the courage to take it, which resulted in a low efficiency, high input cost, loss of time, and which also nimbler competition to take advantage. Ladies and gentlemen, this happens every day in our corporate life. We know the problem, but we take time to fix that. And by the time we fix that, the cost of fixing that goes quite high and the time is lost. And in the meantime, your competitor take advantage of the situation. A particular contract or a project is awarded to him and you have no way to come across it. So therefore, it's important to have the courage to take right decision and weigh its pros and cons before taking that, so that you do not impact large contingent for saving a small thing. That takes me to the next cardinal principle, which is absolute justice and impartiality. If you're a leader, you're expected to be just and fair to everybody, be it your employees, your colleagues, your stakeholders, even to your competitors. No person likes to be punished, but yet the people accept punishment if they know everybody who commits that kind of a default or a blunder will get the same punishment. They should know that it is imparted with justice and impartiality. Similarly, no man likes being superseded. Every time when you have an annual review and there are promotions and increments, everybody expects, because I'm senior, I'll be promoted. But still, we have to sometimes take tough decisions and promote the most efficient person. So no one likes being superseded, yet men will accept supersession if they know that it's being done fairly and if they know that they have been superseded by a more competent person. Do not promote a wrong person just because he knows you, or he knows your wife, or he knows your girlfriend, or he has a liability for which he needs higher salary. By promoting wrong person, we not only create liability for ourselves, but we also create liability for organizations and next generations. But unfortunately, in our corporate world, especially family-run businesses, the main interest of promoter lies in promoting their children to top job, regardless of their capability or talent. They think their children would be reckoned as somebody in life merely by attending parties with those rich and powerful people. Sure, make your kid rich without making him work. But must they sit in the CEO seat? Why can't they just live off their share of profits or dividends? Do you know that market cap of each of the Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon is closer to the combined market cap of all the listed companies in India? And do you know what is the simple, most important reason? All of them have professional CEOs and competent leaders. Now, coming to the government, since the time I have become an entrepreneur, I have felt that government, whichever political dimension, is anti-business. This is a strong statement. I might have a lot of reactions, but I have no option. This statement is denied by most in the government machineries. The phrase ease of doing business irritates me immensely. In the eyes of government and the bureaucrats, ease of doing business is an entrepreneur having the chance to have tea and biscuit with an IS officer, where the latter allows the entrepreneur to do business. However, ease of business is not that. I, with power, am letting you do your business easily. The ease of business is when I, even with all my power, cannot easily stop or harm your business. This power switch is impossible for our power wielders, at least during our lifetime. In our system, business sits much below netas and babus. But look at what's happening in other countries. In the US, the CEO of Twitter had a spar with president of the country. He took him head on because the Twitter CEO knew that no matter what, the president cannot harm his business. Can we imagine that in India? I don't think so. Gentlemen, that takes me to the next attributes of a leader, which is courage, both moral and physical. I do not know which of them is more important. If I was talking to soldiers or NCC candidates or law and order contingent, probably I would lay more emphasis on the physical courage. But since I'm talking to civilian gentlemen and ladies, I will start with the moral courage. The moral courage is ability to distinguish right from wrong, then have the courage to stand up and say your piece. In the words of Field Marshal Manekshaw, a yes man is a horrible man. He must be shunned. He is a disgrace. He is used by his superiors, disliked by his colleagues, and his subordinates have no respect for him. Let me give you an example. When I was working in Oman, it was somewhere 2006, I think, September of 2006, and we were closer to completing a very large petrochemical project which will produce million tons of methanol every year. And we were discussing chartering vessels to carry that methanol, which is liquid, to all over the world. And we were discussing the rate. I realized the kind of charter rate we are paying to the ship owner were very expensive. And in 3 years of those charter rates, I could have actually bought those vessels. So I identified a party which is expert in owning and running and maintaining the ships. And I promised them, I'll give you a business for 10 years. You give me 50% ownership in your company, in these vessels. So in principle, they agreed. And I remember very clearly, 19th September 2006, I put up this proposal to my chairman, Dr. Omar Zoawi, very towering personality, very well-read human being, and thorough gentleman. And as a routine, he sent that note to 5 other board members. And next day at 11 o'clock, 20th September, meeting was called. So Dr. Zoawi was sitting at the extreme edge of the table, one side, and I, being the junior most, was sitting on the other extreme end. All the other board members were probably 20 to 25 years senior to me in service, and at least 15 to 20 years elder to me in the age. So Dr. Zoawi started asking them, so what do you think? To my surprise, all of them unanimously said, no, sir, we should not do this project. And they gave all the reasons which normally people who do not have the courage to do anything, do that. And then Dr. Zoawi looked at me. I thought for a second, I couldn't speak for 30 seconds. But I thought, if today I go back by accepting this, I will not be able to live at peace. So I told Dr. Zoawi, give me 5 minutes to speak. I know I'm going to risk my job after this, what I'm going to speak, but I still want to do that. I said, all these people are sycophant and incompetent persons. Very big statement, junior most board member, making in the board for Dr. Zoawi. And I told him, either after this I'll be sacked or I will never be cooperated by these board members. But nevertheless, I want to tell you, none of them have read or understood this project note. I said, we are buying vessels with a well-known, experienced owner and operator. We are getting these vessels 10% cheaper because our joint venture partners buys almost 50 to 60 vessels every year. We are buying these vessels from one of the most reputed shipyards, South Korea. We have given 10 years maintenance and operation contract to our joint venture partner. And these vessels have 10-year charter party contract with me. I'll be paying them for 10 years. And with 3 years charter party rate, my vessel would be free of debt and promoter's investment. Tell me, where am I wrong? And why should we not do it? Dr. Zoawi looked at me, and that's the day, ladies and gentlemen, I was promoted from a senior vice president to group executive director. So there's a very thin line between becoming an executive director and being dismissed from the job. So that's for the moral courage. Let me come to a physical courage. Fear is a natural phenomenon like sex and hunger. If someone says he's not frightened, he's a lawyer. It's one thing to be frightened, but second to show fear. When your knees are knocking and your teeth are chattering and you're about to make your own geography, that's when the real leader comes out. Once you show fear in front of the men you are leading, doesn't matter who they are, whether they are civilians or armed forces people or union leaders or students, then you have no right to command them or lead them. You must have seen a young sergeant with a 3-foot stick in his hand comes out in a crowd of 400 or 500 people who are rioting, and just with his confidence quells away that crowd. What does he has? He has a confidence, he has a charisma. Gentlemen, that takes me to the next aspect, which is loyalty. Does it need a lot of explanation? Loyalty is a two-way traffic. If you expect loyalty, you have to give loyalty to the people. You have to be realistic to the people's need, and therefore loyalty has to be two-way. The next attribute is management of men and material. Probably you all know better than me how to manage your material, but I can only say when you're managing your stores and stocks, look at your P&L and not the balance sheet. Look at your cash flow. Regarding managing men, those of you who have led or commanded a large battalion of men like I have done, know that men in number can be very nasty. There's no point saying Jai Hind to them or Namaste to them when they're rioting in the streets or when they're striking and spoiling your property. But men have their own problem. They have a problem of debt, they have a problem of child education, they have a problem of ill health of their parents, they have a problem of a death in the family. They get despondent very quickly. So you as a leader have to understand each individual's problem and address that. You have to get them rid of their despondency. And if you do that, they will give their life for you. They will give their loyalty for you. Gentlemen, after this COVID-19 event, I have developed a new additional attribute what a leader needs, which is resilience. What is resilience? Resilience is the ability to bounce back from the adversity or endure hardship. It has emerged as the most important trait in the leaders steering organizations. Uncertainty during last couple of months brought on by coronavirus and subsequent lockdown has resulted in a deep introspection among business leaders. The kind of resilience you need today as a leader is different from what it was pre-coronavirus. In pre-coronavirus era, leaders were chosen based on set of standard traits like professional knowledge or competence or humility or ethics or courage, experience, foresight, etc. But post-COVID era, resilience will stand out as the key trait as that will help leaders not just cope but transform. The resilient leaders and the organization led by them recover more quickly from the crisis and in fact learn from disruptions. I had the opportunity of meeting quite a few CEOs and promoters of Fortune 500 companies. And I've asked almost the same question to most of them. When you are recruiting senior executives whom you pay millions of dollars as a salary, what do you ask them? Because you have already chosen a person who is very competent, who is leading another organization, who is well qualified, who has all leadership qualities. You will be surprised the answer from all of them has been almost uniform. And that is, what is your biggest failure or adversity? And how did you handle that failure or adversity? The real character of a leader comes out in chaos. It's only in chaos that your core strength, your courage, your charisma, can-do attitude comes out. You know, average leaders raise the bar for themselves. Good leaders raise the bar for others. But great leaders inspire others to raise their own bar. So try to be a great leader if you want to lead an organization and if you think you want to leave an impact or a footprint in the society. Ladies and gentlemen, the next attribute is one single attribute which is responsible or which is most important for any leader. That is discipline and character. What is discipline? Discipline is a code of conduct of a decent living, one with the other in the society. We do not have any law which describes the discipline or code of conduct in India, except maybe in the Indian Army where they have code of conduct, but I'm not asking you to follow that. Even in our constitution, you have fundamental duties which you can claim as a right, but fundamental rights which you can claim as a right, but our fundamental duties are in directive principles. So which are more of guidelines, they do not have the force of law. Where do you learn this discipline from? The daughter learns from the mother, the son learns from father, we learn from our elders. In the organization, we learn from our superiors or from our leaders. All religious books have this in them. The Quran, the Gita, Guru Granth Sahib, Bible, everybody talks about good code of conduct. The Buddha says so, Guru Nanak has written about it. One of the worst indiscipline act which I consider is a non-punctuality. Non-punctuality can cause a lot of harm to the society, to the organizations, and to the individual. Let me give you an example how non-punctuality affects people. In 2003 or 4, I think December of 2003, the Oman wanted to develop a new security systems where they interacted with Siemens, which are provider of communication systems and telephones and switch gears, TVs, etc., etc. A contract value $1 billion was finalized. And contract was to be signed, I think, on 1st or 2nd of January by the king. My boss, Dr. Joavi, being advisor to the king, was assigned the duty of organizing all logistic. It was 27th, if I'm not mistaken, of December. A meeting was scheduled between the chairman of Siemens, is a huge German company, one of the top MNCs, and my chairman, and I, being in charge of project development, was asked to be there to witness or take note. We both sat, me and Dr. Joavi, at 11 o'clock. We had our first cup of tea, 11:15. We had a second cup of kava, 11:23. And the gentleman did not turn up. Dr. Joavi picked up a phone and spoke to the king. Sir, this is what has happened, and I don't think we should give a contract to this company. The king immediately agreed. Ultimately, the chairman of Siemens arrived at 11:29 or 11:30. And he shamelessly walks in and doesn't even say sorry. And when Dr. Joavi asked him, may I ask you, why are you late? He said, nothing, I just got up late and then got caught up in some things. So he offered him as a courtesy tea or coffee or biscuit, whatever. And then when chairman of Siemens asked him, so how are we going about it? He said, we are not going about it. You are not getting this contract. And he said, why? He said, the chairman of a group cannot come in time. The company cannot deliver in time. Therefore, we are not giving this contract. Ladies and gentlemen, that gentleman lost a business worth $1 billion, where he could have easily earned $200 or $300 million as a profit, just because of his act of non-punctuality. And this happens every day in our life. I give you an example where I took similar action. We were new to Muscat. I think it was 2002 or 3. And by then we had a couple of friends. So invited around 10 families for a dinner. And my invitation is always crystal clear. You are welcome to join us at 8 o'clock. The bar will continue till 10. And thereafter we'll sit for the dinner. So everybody came according to the number of drinks you wanted to have. Somebody came at 8, 8:15, 8:30, 9 o'clock. And by 8:55, by bar boy rang the bell and everybody took his drink, and by exactly, or 9:45, and by 10 o'clock, the bar was locked. And everybody sat for the dinner. It was a sit-down dinner. A friend of mine and his wife rang a bell at almost 10:30 when people have already started having dinner. Of course, he was let in the house. He doesn't come to me. He straight goes to the bar and asks the bar boy, can he have a drink? And bar boy told him, I'm sorry, bar is locked. He says, why can't you open this? He said, no, I don't have that key. And shamelessly, he comes to the dining table and says, Mr. Chima, your bar boy is refusing me a drink. Yes, he's doing his job. Bar is closed. You can join us for dinner. So there was a pin drop silence in that dining room, but the gentleman settled himself. Of course, we offered him a glass of red wine or white wine, what was served on the dining table. Since that day, whenever I have invited people, they have generally turned up in time or plus minus 5 minutes. But ladies and gentlemen, this is one thing which lacked very badly in Nagpur. In my last 8 years, except 2 people, I can name them. One is Sabeen Walli, who runs Volkswagen, and one is Mr. Tarun Saman, who is ex-managing director of Tata Motor Finance, who normally turns up in time plus minus 2 minutes. But otherwise, whenever I have set a meeting with anybody, they are late by half an hour or 45 minutes. And the worst is they don't even feel they've done something wrong. Other act of indiscipline is we do not respect our country and surrounding. We keep spitting pan at every staircase we climb. You know, we have to put pictures of gods on the staircase and next to the toilet to protect those walls or guard those walls from spitting and urinating. What a shame. I think we as a well-read, respected human beings should respect others' time, we should respect our surroundings, and we should inculcate a little bit of discipline in our life so that our children can follow, our colleagues can follow. That takes me to the character. I do not mean by character what priest or probably father in church or Granthiji in Gurdwara will teach you. Of course, you should not speak lying. Of course, you should not cover your neighbor's wife, especially when the husband is seen. But I mean something bigger. Knowing yourself, knowing who you are, know your character, know your qualities, know your principles. You know, your talent, your intelligence, and your academic qualification can open any gate for you. But only your values and your character will keep that gate open for long. If you follow Niti, Niyam and Siddhant, पूरी दुनिया आपके पास आएगी. You will become a magnet to attract customers, resources, material and funds. You can do anything you like. So lead a life in such a way that everyone wants to follow that. You must have learned many a time people at very senior positions lose that just because of their act of indiscipline and loss of character. They do something which is not acceptable by society. Now let me give you 2 very, very important examples of what a character is. You know, I lost my mother on 31st July 2003. And that night, I was in a hotel in London, and my chairman was also in London, but he had a house, he was staying in his house. My brothers or my wife couldn't reach me on my mobile because I normally switch off my phone or put it on silent when I go to bed. So everybody knew that if message has to reach to me, it must go to Dr. Jawavi's residence, and then it will reach how it has to reach. So at 2 o'clock, Dr. Jawavi was informed that my mother has died. And Dr. Jawavi knew how much my mother loved me and how much I loved her. Now look at what he has done. At 2 o'clock at night, he could have simply sent a waiter or a person to inform me in the hotel that your mother has died. But he didn't do that. He dressed up. He called his driver. He picked up the most light biscuit what I eat. There's a ginger biscuit you get only in Harrods in London. And he came to the hotel. Before taking the lift, he ordered a ginger tea for me. And then around 2:45, he rang my doorbell. Of course, I was surprised to see him. He didn't say a word. And I was asking, what has happened? He said, no, no, tomorrow you have a very, very important meeting. And I thought, let me discuss something with you before you take a flight. So tea came, both of us had tea. We had biscuits. I was reasonably stable. And then he's put his hand on my hand like this. And you know what did he say? Chima, the person who loved you the most has transformed his or her shape from physical to intellect or superficial. You know why? Because she couldn't be around with you all over the world physically. I realized what he was talking and he knew what he was talking. It took me 5-10 minutes to realign myself. And then he said, my personal aircraft is ready at Heathrow. Permissions are taken for 6 o'clock takeoff. It's only 3 o'clock. Even if you leave at 4:30, my car will take you directly to the aircraft because security pass is arranged. And you can go and attend whatever the last rites are. So I spoke to my family, my brothers. My mother had died previous night. And on 1st of August, she was to be cremated at 10 o'clock. And by no means I could have reached that because we stay around 4 hours drive from Delhi. So I told him, Dr. Jawabi, thank you very much. I cannot reach. Therefore, whether I go today or go after 3 days doesn't make a difference. But what I have to do today is probably what my mother would like me to continue doing. That day, I was supposed to fly down to Düsseldorf and then drive down to Essen, it's a place in Germany, MN Ferrostahl's office, and sign the 1 million ton methanol project contract. So I requested Dr. Jawabi, I says, I will not take this aircraft to India, but please allow me to take this aircraft as I'm little disturbed. So I took his aircraft to Germany, signed that contract, came back, and evening around 6 o'clock, I gave him that contract where we started our $1 billion, 1 million ton methanol plant, first of its kind in the Middle East and first in Oman. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the real character of a human being. That's what I mean by character. He showed his character by doing what I did, and probably I did what I was supposed to do in similar circumstances, or that's what my mother could have expected me to do. So both employer and employee, or a senior leader and junior leader, have to display that kind of a character. Let me give you another example. All of you must have heard about Mahindra and Mahindra. When Keshav Mahindra was a non-executive chairman, so most of the decision was taken, routine decision taken without him, but key decision will still go to him. You know, when Mahindra designed Scorpio, there was a big revolution in India. That's the first time, again, cars supply was in waiting list. And the designer did a fantastic thing. You know, all of us, or those who are exposed to it, everybody wants to own a 4-wheel drive with a tire hanging at the back and stat being put to look a macho man. That's altogether a different thing, that 90% of these 4-wheel drives never go off the turmeric road. So designers thought we have done a fantastic thing. They put the tire below the Scorpio boot, which balances the car better because it's lower in the gravity. And they put the empty drum behind the car so that it looks macho vehicle. You know what did Keshav Mahindra say? That he vetoed that design. And everybody is saying, we have come up with such an innovative design. What is he doing? You know what he said? These words, please, if you want to record, you can record it. A very, very big lesson. Mahindra will never stand for something on the outside when there is something else inside. That's a character I'm talking about. That's the kind of principles you should live in. I think we have done a bit of gyan. So leaders are also human beings, you know. Generally, men and women like their leader to be a bit of man, a bit of lad. You have heard of Julius Caesar? All of you know that he was a great leader. But when he used to come to Rome, the senators were to lock their wives. Many of you must have read about Napoleon. He had many beautiful girls like Georgia and Marriott and Josephine in his harem. But you all will agree that he was a great leader. Duke of Wellington, night before the War of Waterloo, there were more women of luscious proportions in his chamber than the staff officers. But he was a great leader. In India, we had our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, was a great leader. And you know what Priyadarshini has written about her or him? There were two pleasures Nehru could not resist: the vitality of mountains and the company of interesting women. We all have read about his intimacy with Edwina Mountbatten, the wife of Lord Mountbatten, Padmaja Naidu, and Vijanti Mala, and so on and so forth. But you will all agree that he was a great leader. Ladies and gentlemen, having spoken about the qualities or attributes of the leadership, let me share with you the fundamental principles which leaders should follow. Do not sweat about the small stuff as a leader. And secondly, carry your team along, because you win or lose as a team and not as an individual. There are many examples, like when Narendra Modi first time contested to lead the country as a prime minister, his slogan was "Ab ki baar Modi Sarkar." He did not say "Ab ki baar Modi jeetega." So he took the team along. He not only won the majority vote, but majority numbers in the parliament. It was first time that we had an absolute majority in the parliament. I'll give you another story of young gentleman called Raghu Raman. Raghu, I'm borrowing your story if you're listening somewhere. Raghu Raman joined Indian Military Academy, which is in Dehradun. And in Indian Military Academy, normally people either come from NDAs or defense background or Sainik schools or military schools. But there are also people who come as a direct entry after graduation. So he was one of those direct entry, came from Delhi. He was a union leader before that and very vocal leader. And in IMA, you have 3 terms: first term, second term, and third term. The third termers are normally treated as kings. The second termers are treated like princes, and third terms are treated much below human beings. So he was in the class second or third day, and the instructor came and asked, "Gentlemen, any problem? You are new to this academy." And this gentleman raised his hand. Everybody was trying to pull him down, but he didn't bother. He said, "No, I must say." He said, "Yes, sir, there's a problem. The seniors take away all the biscuits in the morning tea, and when we go, we don't get biscuit, we just get the tea. They're supposed to take only 2 or 3 biscuits." The instructor said, "Okay, we'll fix this." In the evening, after dinner around 9 o'clock, the instructor in a track suit on his bullet motorcycle came to the residential area. He didn't go to the first termers, he didn't go to the second termers, he straightway went to the third termers. And he asked them to fall out. Fall out in military language means come out of your barracks and stand in the street. And he gave them all kind of possible punishments: back roll and front roll and frog jump and knee walk, whatever, till most of them are bleeding from their elbows and knees. And he says, "This is what you teach to your first termers or young students, gentlemen cadets, that they are sweating about biscuits when they are here to be trained for the fighting war for the country?" And he went away. The third termers don't talk to the first termers, they went to the second termers. And then from 12 o'clock probably till 2 o'clock, the second termers were punished badly. And then second termers came to the first termers and they were punished badly. So what it teaches is one person's mistake causes problem for everybody. And second day, when Raghu Raman was in the class, the same instructor came and asked him, "Mr. Raghu Raman, any problem, gentleman cadet?" He said, "No, sir, no problem, all is sorted out." So what it teaches us? When you're destined to do bigger things in life, don't sweat for the small stuff. Don't creep about small problems. My bus did not come in time and my motorcycle got punctured. These are things bound to happen. Follow your mission. The third thing I want to tell you is you cannot and need not be good in everything, but be the best in few or at least something, and then glory is all yours. I can again give you the example of Raghu Raman. When he was passing out, he was probably 313th in the total number of 350 gentlemen carried to pass out. And there was a new battalion being raised. And the CEO of that battalion wrote to commandant of the IMA, Indian Military Academy, that please post me an officer who's good at sports, may not be very good in merit. So commandant forgot the first one. He posted Raghu Raman because he was not very good in the merit in that unit. And when he was about to reach there, everybody was talking about Captain Raghu Raman, or that time Lieutenant Raghu Raman. They were cutting a officer who was very good in sports and blah, blah. And when he reached there and he was being escorted to his accommodation, the NCO asked him, "Sir, what do you play?" And Raghu Raman again said, "Nothing much, bit of everything." And the word spread next day, oh, he's not only good in sports, but he's very humble. So Raghu Raman was embarrassed. A couple of days later, there was a shooting competition, and Raghu Raman passed through that. And he saw people are preparing themselves for the shooting competition. So he says, "Can I also fire?" So Subedar Major gave him a revolver, loaded, fully loaded, and he fired, tuck, 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 and all the bullets hit the bullseye. He gave him the second one and third one. And then he called up his CEO. "Sir, this new officer is fantastic at firing. We are going to win." The CEO didn't believe him. He came and he saw Raghu Raman firing. And then he said, "Raghu Raman, you don't need to be good in sports and you don't need to run because you can kill your enemy." So, gentlemen, the lesson learned is many a time you will fail in something in life, but that failure in life is designed to bring out what is your real strength. You do not always choose your occupations. Many a time, occupations choose you. They automatically align with your strengths and you reach where you are supposed to reach. You have to be always prepared to face worst or best in your life. You cannot wait for the opportunities. You know, those of you who have little bit relationship with the armed forces, when you leave the armed forces campus, there's a slogan written on the gate, "Aaj mukabla hoga." That means be prepared for the worst every day. It's absolutely true in the business as well. We do not know when our adversities are going to attack us, when our competitors is going to beat us, and when the good opportunities are going to knock at our door. So every day be prepared for the best and the worst. The next thing I want to tell you is you win or lose as a leader. Your subordinates don't win or lose. Even if your subordinate wins, it's you as a leader win. And if your subordinate loses, you as a leader lose. Therefore, take your teams very emotionally and very humbly with you always. The next thing, please remember, you cannot be unlucky always. If something has not happened the way you like, let that incident of bad luck not keep you demotivated for long. Go on and try again. Have an attitude of never say die. You must have read the story of King Bruce and Spider. The King Bruce failed 15 times and he was dejected, and then he saw a spider making web who also failed 15 times, but she tried 16th time. And looking at the spider, King Bruce attacked again and he won. The next thing as a leader we should be good at is the material gain should be a second thing in our life. The material gain cannot be only motivation for you to be an entrepreneur or a leader. If you think that is so, I don't agree. There are many examples that armed forces personnel give their life for creating an impact, or for living for their conscience. What is the motivation they have? There's no material gain. They want to protect their country. They want to live their passion. A lot of young officers, at the age of 24 or 30, have given their life and got Paramveer Chakra or so on. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you that I've read many books on management. I've visited many campus of excellent management schools. But I'm going to read out to you something which has taught me the most important lesson in my life. This is the last lesson which NCOs, non-commissioned officers, give to the officers who are newly minted in Indian Military Academy before they go into your units. I'm not going to read out the full thing, but only key paras. Let me tell you, no management book or management institution has more distilled management principle or lesson, or even closer to this, be it Harvard, Yale, ISP, anybody. Each word I'm going to speak now is a liquid gold. You can record or at least imbibe, close your eyes and listen to it carefully. One of the paragraph of speech says, what do we as your troops expect from you as an officer or commanders or leaders? He says, we expect from you an unassailable personality, integrity and highest of morals. We expect you to maintain the highest state of personal appearance. We expect you to be fair, to be consistent, to have dignity but not the aloofness, to have compassion and understanding, and to treat each soldier as an individual with individual problems. And we expect you to have courage, the courage of your conviction, the courage to stand up and be counted to defend your men when they have followed your orders, even when your orders were in error. To assume the blame when you are wrong. We expect to stick out your chin and say that this man is not qualified and he will be promoted only on my dead body. I've already told you, gentlemen and ladies, that do not promote the wrong man. Even your subordinate do not expect you to promote the wrong man. We expect you to have the courage to face danger. There will be opportunities where you may emerge as a hero. And what is his definition of a hero? Hero is an individual who is faced with unbearable situation and uses means at his disposal to make that situation slightly more bearable. So it's undesirable situation and uses means at his disposal and make it little more bearable. Do not display recklessness and expose yourself and your men to unnecessary risk to reduce your normal chances of survival. If you do that, they will lose faith in you. What do they say next? What can you expect from us as your subordinates? From few of us, you can expect, prove your attitude. We are not going to expect you leader on very first day. From few of us who tried but could not become officers, you can expect a little bit of resentment. And from few of us who are old-timers, you can expect patience and tolerance. But from most of us, you can expect loyalty to your position, devotion to our cause, not your cause, admiration to your honest efforts, courage to match your courage, guts to match your guts, endurance to match your endurance, motivation to match your motivation, and desire for an achievement to match your desire for an achievement. We will not shiver in the cold if you shiver with us. We will not mind the heat if you sweat with us. And when our cigarettes are gone, we will not mind quit smoking provided your cigarettes are gone. And then he says something which is most powerful line of prose I have ever read in my life. If mission requires, we will storm the very gate of hell right behind you. Three things, ladies and gentlemen. If mission requires, not if you require, or just to want to prove yourself a Chatak Charlie. And we will take the most dangerous path, the gate of hell, but behind you. So they are very clear who has to lead. Ladies and gentlemen, no appointment letters ever appoint anyone as a leader. You are generally appointed as CEO or MD or HODs. Leadership is an intangible thing which can develop with yourself each and every day. Kailash, if you have another 5 minutes, I can go on or I can stop. Kailash, I can't hear you. Yeah, so do I have another 5 minutes or should I stop? Okay, fine. So give me 2 minutes. So having discussed what makes a leader, it's important that people perceive you as a leader. And how do you do that? You create an impression there in mind that you are better than the rest. In other words, you have to create your market value. Let your subjects, your peers, your subordinates, and even your competitors perceive you as the most important, most intelligent, most powerful, and most useful person. As we are short of time, I'll just wind up that having become a leader, which is one thing that a leader must do. Leaders are supposed to produce leaders better than them. Every occasion, every time in your life, when you achieve something, remember that you have achieved that on the shoulders of other leaders, well-wishers, parents, friends, who have stood and allowed you to stand on their shoulders and achieve what you have achieved. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Jai Hind. I'm open to the questions, but I only request that please do not ask me any personal question. Kailash, I can't hear you. No. Can you come and set right probably here? The volume is off.
धर्मेंद्र वर्मा जी ने पूछा है कि रामचरित is very much popular in India. Ram was having a character of congruence, that is, words and actions are in harmony. This was a great character of Ram. Katni और करनी में समानता थी. This character of great leadership is missing nowadays. Kindly express your views about leadership which India requires and being a role model for others and youngsters in particular.
Mr. Verma, I think I have already covered this when I gave you an example of Keshav Mahindra, when I gave you an example of Dr. Jawabi, that your action shall speak your character, your vision, your desire, your goal should match with the action what you do. So both in case of Keshav Mahindra and Dr. Jawabi, they lived up to the principles, they lived up to their character. And you're absolutely right. Unless your actions and your plans are not aligned, they're not in the same line, you can never succeed.
एक और सवाल दिलीप चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट दिलीप लोहिया जी ने पूछा है, सर करेज बिफोर द सुपीरियर टू शो देयर inability or step foot into their shoes is key to success, is right? Sir, another question, what should be the good quality of a great leader?
I'll answer the second question first. I think we have been talking about only good qualities of a leader for the last hour and a half. So you can combine that. Probably you must have asked your question in the beginning. And the first question, the courage before a superior. Gentlemen and ladies, if you know what you are talking, if you know your subject, if you are professionally knowledgeable, if you are professionally competent, you must speak your mind. Yes, man is a horrible man, I've told you. You have to own up what you say and prove that what you are saying makes sense. Like I did myself, I gave you an example. That when everybody turned on my project, I stood up. I says, either my job or this project, I cannot take the ball. So you have to have the courage to stand up and speak when you think what you're doing is right.
भूषण कराथे जी हैं, इन्वेस्टमेंट ट्रेनर हैं. उन्होंने सवाल किया है, थैंक्स फॉर द वंडरफुल एग्जांपल्स टू डिलीवर द पॉइंट्स. It would be great if you would throw light on lack of patience these days to achieve results among the current generation. In a bid to achieve faster results, many unethical decisions are being taken by leaders that though may provide short-term results but destroy the fabric of the organization in longer term. We have many examples as Enron, Satyam, or example of Anil Ambani Group, etc. How to establish trade-off between pressure to achieve fast results in cutthroat competition and preserving the ethics in an organization.
Bhushan, thank you very much. It's a beautiful, I would say, observation. As an entrepreneur, you have to decide what you want to achieve in life. If it's only a material gain, you will have the tendency to compromise with your principles. And that's what most of the youngsters are doing. And in government machinery, I gave you an example of gang rape in Gurgaon. When you take a decision without weighing pros and cons, and when you take a decision without seeing its consequences, the results could be disastrous at times. So my appeal to all youngsters is, please deserve before you desire. Prepare yourself. Work on your strengths. See where you are strong. Don't look at your weaknesses, leave them behind. Even when you're competing with somebody, look at his strength, don't look at his weakness, and then find a weakness, his strength, and then encash that. Because his weakness he can cover any time. But if you attack his strength, he will not know what to do. And I give you the example. You know, Hero Honda was a very famous bike. Fill it, shut it, and forget it. And when Rajiv Bajaj created a Pulsar, everybody thought we should do something better than that. We should, do something. He said, no. My weakness is I cannot produce so much of efficiency and get popularity. He said their strength is mileage. Let me not hurt their strength. I want to create a bike which is a power symbol. And he created Pulsar, which is associated with the youngsters as a power bike. And then he did a joint venture with KTM. And today, more KTMs are sold than when established brands of Harley Davidson and so. So always focus on what you want to achieve in life. Follow your ethics, follow your principles, and you will always reach your goal.
Tirth Chandan Patra, which attributes you will rate as top 3 attributes of a successful leader in the current market scenario?
Sanjay, good afternoon. Most important trait of leaders are discipline, which comprises of punctuality and which you don't follow, character, and a desire to succeed. If you have a strong character, if you follow a discipline and desire to achieve, nothing can stop you.
Anurag Patankar hai. Can our weakness become our strength? Is it advisable to work upon it is our desire if it is our desire?
Yes, why not? Have you heard in 2008 Olympic the name of a gentleman who won 8 gold medals in swimming? He had broken his hand 2 years before that Olympic. He was instructed by his trainer not to enter the pool. He did not give up. He covered his weakness by practicing to swim with his legs. And he won all the 8 gold medals. If you know of a lot of Paralympics sports person, they have become gold medalists with their handicaps. You have heard of Bruce Lee. You know the Bruce Lee's one leg was 1 inch shorter than the other leg. Still, he never let it hamper his achievement. He made that as a strength, and with that leg, the kind of kick he could give, the people of equal legs could not do that. So if you have a desire, you can always convert your weakness into strength. But my advice to you is, first encash on your strength. Why should you bother for your weakness? God has created every individual differently. If you are destined to do something different, why chase something which you are not capable of doing, or which you are finding difficult to do? Concentrate on your strengths, and I can assure you, you will achieve much better than concentrating on your weakness. Thank you.
One last question I'll take. We'll finish after this. Dharmendra Verma, as said by you, that ease of doing business is not satisfactory when it comes to government. What can be done to improve in this area?
You know, there's a famous saying, we get the kind of leaders we deserve. It's for us. Stop tolerating that nonsense. If all of us decide one day that we don't want to bribe somebody, you think our work would be stopped? No. Because no one to bribe, they have to approve some projects or some businesses. But we all have to have the guts of saying no to nonsense. Stick up to your principles, work on your strengths, and nobody can harm you. So, government machinery will change only when you stop tolerating them. Expose them. Bring them to the general public knowledge, and they will stop doing it. It's a tough ambition or tough task, but I'm sure nothing is impossible.
I would say, sir, a lot of members are thanking and congratulating you for excellent motivational delivery on leadership topic. I would like to invite Reet Rupani to deliver a vote of thanks.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tolerating for so long. All the best and have a great day.
So, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to propose the vote of thanks. Thanks to Sampark for giving me this opportunity to show my gratitude towards our guest speaker. Sir's today's topic on leadership and what makes a leader, what makes one a leader. A very insightful session and deeper connected to all the points. I have jotted down certain few points. I will say, Sir guided us for being a leader. We have to be in continuous learning. He gave various examples regarding leadership. If you are putting your head and soul and focus, it will take you to the path of leadership. A leader must be able to take decision quickly and for the benefit of all. He thrown insight on management of men and material. As a leader, you have to understand your people's problem and help them always so that they will always be loyal to you. Leaders should help people during this post-COVID time as everyone is facing and stuck in their life. Good leaders raise their bars for others. For most important, any leader should be in discipline and code of conduct. All the religious books guide us about the code of conduct, and Sir said non-punctuality can cause lots of harm to the organization and the society specifically. If a man of a group cannot be on time, the company can't be successful. Punctuality is very, very important point of our life. We should respect our time, others' time, and importance of the time so that we can inculcate in our kids as well. Leader should live life in such a way that everyone wishes to follow them. Sir said, always follow your mission. Such a vast wisdom. I just jot down few points. I just say a person with abundance wisdom. Finally, the last thing, leaders are supposed to produce more leaders for the society. And Sir justified all the questions thrown by our members. My sincere gratitude and thanks to Sir for conducting today's informative session for our Sampark family and sharing their vast wisdom and knowledge with us, taking out their precious time. Thankful, Sir, for your valuable presence at Sampark. And thanks to Alka ji, our Maharana Pratap Varg member, for proposing wonderful introduction of a guest speaker and their valuable presence at Sampark. Sampark members, I thank all my Sampark members for attending today's session in large numbers, even outside members for their presence. Around 75 plus members today joined. It's really amazing thing. Friends, we organize Sampark Gurukul training on every Sundays at 12:30 p.m. with various renowned speakers exclusively for our Sampark Parivar. So friends, please do attend all the Gurukul trainings and take the maximum benefit of it. Lastly, I would thank to all the directors of Sampark for taking this initiative for all of us, and it's a great privilege for all. Once again, my sincere thanks to all. Happy Sunday. That's all from my side. Thanks. God bless you all.